Remember the early 2010s? News channels were flooded with images of protests, political drama, and headlines screaming about a potential collapse of the euro. At the heart of it all was one nation, Greece. Today, we're going deep into the story of the Greek debt crisis, a dramatic saga of ambition, financial missteps, and a fight for survival that shook the foundations of modern Europe. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's a human story of resilience, and it holds powerful lessons for all of us. So how did it all begin? Let's rewind to 2001. Greece officially joins the Eurozone, a club of European nations sharing a single currency, the euro. This was a moment of immense national pride. Joining the euro meant access to lunch loans and a sense of belonging to Europe's economic elite. It felt like the party had just begun. The Greek government, along with its citizens, started borrowing money like never before. The 2004 Athens Olympics, for instance, were a spectacular showcase. But they came with a staggering price tag, costing billions more than projected. Government spending on public sector salaries and pensions also ballooned. The economy was growing, and life was good. But underneath the surface, a mountain of debt was piling up. Greece was spending far more than it was earning, running huge budget deficits year after year. The problem was, for a long time, nobody seemed to notice. Or perhaps, nobody wanted to. International banks, particularly from Germany and France, were more than happy to lend Greece money. Why not? Greece was part of the Eurozone, which made it seem like a super safe bet. They were lending out money at incredibly low rates, fueling the borrowing binge. Then, in 2008, the music stopped. The global financial crisis hit, and suddenly, the world woke up and started looking very closely at everyone's finances. In late 2009, the newly elected Greek government made a shocking announcement. The country's deficit was actually more than double what the previous government had claimed. It was a bombshell. Trust evaporated overnight. Investors panicked. Interest rates Greece had to pay to borrow new money skyrocketed, making it impossible for the country to manage its debts. Greece was on the brink of bankruptcy. A Greek default wouldn't just be a Greek problem, it would be a European catastrophe. If Greece went down, it could trigger a domino effect, taking other indebted Eurozone countries like Portugal, Ireland, and Spain with it. The very survival of the euro was at stake. The big question became, should Greece be saved? The situation was incredibly tense. Inside the European Union, there were heated debates. Countries like Germany, a major lender, were initially hesitant. Their taxpayers were angry about the idea of bailing out a country they felt had been fiscally irresponsible. But the alternative was too terrifying to consider. A collapse of the euro would have been a financial apocalypse. So the Troika, the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund stepped in. In 2010, they agreed to the first massive bailout package for Greece, worth 110 billion euros. But this money came with harsh conditions. In exchange for the loans, Greece had to implement brutal austerity measures. This is where the crisis really hit home for ordinary people. Austerity is a clean-sounding word, but its reality on the ground was devastating. It meant deep cuts to government spending. Pensions were slashed, public sector salaries were cut, and thousands of government employees lost their jobs. Taxes, meanwhile, went way up. The goal was to shrink the deficit and get the national finances back in order, but the immediate effect was a deep and painful recession. The streets of Athens and other Greek cities became the stage for massive, often violent protests. People were angry, scared, and felt betrayed. They were paying the price for mistakes made by politicians and bankers. Employment soared, especially among young people, reaching over 50% at its peak. Soup kitchens multiplied, and stories of families struggling to afford food and medicine became commonplace. The human cost of the crisis was immense, a social tragedy unfolding in real time. The dream of European prosperity had turned into a nightmare for millions. Despite the first bailout and the painful austerity, it wasn't enough. The Greek economy was shrinking so fast that its debt burden was actually getting worse relative to its size. In 2012, a second, even larger bailout was needed. Coupled with a historic haircut where private bondholders, like banks and investment funds, agreed to forgive a large portion of Greece's debt. Even this wasn't the end of the drama. By 2015, after years of grinding austerity, the Greek people had had enough. They elected a radical left-wing government, Syriza, led by Alexis Tsipras, who promised to end austerity. This set up a dramatic showdown with the EU. For months, Greece and its creditors were locked in a high-stakes game of chicken. Greece was running out of money again, and the threat of Grexit, a Greek exit from the Eurozone, was more real than ever. Banks were closed, and limits were placed on cash withdrawals to prevent a total collapse. It felt like the final act. In a dramatic referendum, the Greek people voted a resounding no to the creditors' new austerity demands. But in the end, faced with the abyss of a full-blown economic meltdown, the Greek government had to capitulate and accept a third bailout with, you guessed it, more austerity measures. It was a bruising, humbling experience. But slowly, painfully, things began to turn around. The Greek economy started to stabilize. The reforms, as harsh as they were, did begin to make the government's finances more sustainable. Tourism, a vital part of the Greek economy, bounced back. In 2018, Greece officially exited its final bailout program. The crisis that had dominated a decade of European life was finally over, at least in its most acute phase. So what lessons did we learn from this decade-long ordeal? First, the crisis exposed a fundamental flaw in the euro's design. You can't have a shared currency without closer coordination on budgets and economic policies. It taught Europe that unity requires shared responsibility. Second, it was a brutal lesson in the human cost of austerity. While financial discipline is necessary, imposing such severe cuts during a recession can crush an economy and a society. It sparked a global debate about the right way to handle sovereign debt. Finally, the story of the Greek crisis is a story of incredible resilience. The Greek people endured years of hardship that would have broken many nations. They protested, they debated, and ultimately, they endured. Greece is still dealing with the scars of the crisis, but its economy is growing again. And the country remains a core member of the European Union, the tale of the Greek debt. Crisis serves as a powerful reminder of how interconnected our world is, how quickly fortunes can change, and how financial decisions made in distant boardrooms can profoundly shape the lives of millions. Thank you so much for watching. This was a complex story, and I hope we've shed some light on it. What do you think were the biggest lessons from this crisis? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shape our world. See you next time.